Alright, if you have not been following along, then check the description for a link to the previous videos of this series. So far, I have demoed the shop space by ripping out all of the build outs inside. The wiring, I roughed in for a toilet, then I rewired for wall outlets, ceiling outlets, and hung lights. This week, I'm going to be covering the spray foam insulation portion of the build. Let's get into it. I don't know about you, but I find spray foam so interesting. I had my first experience with spray foam back in 2018 when I was building my personal shop, which is a traditional stick framed building. I partnered with SES Foam on it to have the walls and ceiling sprayed with open cell spray foam. Check out the video for more information on it. This time I am still working with SES, but I'm going with closed foam, and I'll get into the difference in a little bit. But first, let's cover the prep work involved. I'm not even sure how old this building is, but it's been used as a shop space and is very dirty. The walls are covered with dirt, dust, and honestly, who knows what else. It's expected, but does need to be swept off so that the spray foam has good contact to stick to the walls. Every surface that will be getting spray foam gets a broom ran over it to get the dirt off. It might seem tedious, but like with everything else, time spent on prep work will make or break your result. I want to say a big thank you to SimpliSafe for sponsoring this video. You guys know that I've used SimpliSafe for my personal and commercial shop security for a while now. They provide serious home security with all the protection, but with none of the hassle, headaches, or expense of the old school brands. They've got sensors to cover every window, room, and door, plus lots of great extras like smart locks, video doorbells, water sensors, and more. Their new wireless outdoor security camera has a built-in spotlight with color night vision and two-way audio, allowing you to speak directly to somebody on your property, which I really like. SimpliSafe is trusted by over 3 million Americans, and it's no wonder as I found all of the devices to be very reliable, set up as a breeze, and they're easy to use. I've got the security system installed, window sensors, and HD cameras inside and out. The 24/7 monitoring service calls the authorities immediately in an emergency, making me feel extra safe. Save 20% on your SimpliSafe security system, and your first month is free when you sign up for interactive monitoring. You can visit simplisafe.com/April to learn more. I'm working with a company called Texas Insulation, and it's pretty impressive how they show up in a truck with everything needed. Next, the crew started sealing off all of the small openings created by the corrugation and the metal paneling. You can see how much sunlight comes through in little places. The main point of spray foam is to create an air seal and an air barrier to prevent air from moving in and out of the space. With that, any opening will defeat that seal and reduce the efficiency. The crew will come through with a large gun to get the walls and ceiling, but first they use a can of foam to hit the small tight areas. Just like with spraying paint, there will be overspray. So next is to mask off and protect anything you don't want covered in foam, because it is difficult to get off once it's on. Big rolls of plastic are laid out to cover the entire floor. When the guy starts spraying, the air from the tool will blow up the edges of the plastic. So a guy went around the entire perimeter and used some spray adhesive in little stretches to temporarily hold the edges of the plastic to the floor. And I thought that was pretty brilliant, and it worked well. They still used a few pieces of tape, but I stored that one away for future use. Tape is also used to cover the face of every electrical outlet. If you're wanting to keep these sides cleaner, then you can wrap the tape all the way around. However, I was only concerned with the face. The same step was used on the ceiling outlets. Tape can also be used for larger things such as the electrical panel door. You just have to layer it up. Then for larger areas like beams, the bay doors, and even the openings, large sheets of plastic are used. With the openings being closed off, the crew plasticed. They wrapped it in plastic. The crew placed plastic around fans to keep air moving on the inside by bringing in air from the outside. By the end of prep, the space looked like this. It might look like a lot, but an efficient crew like this gets in and out real quick. This step only took a little over an hour. Spray foam is great, but anybody around while it's being applied needs to be in full PPE with a proper respirator. Of course, you don't want to get this stuff in your lungs, but you also don't want it in your eyes, your hair, or on your clothes. The crew wears a full bodysuit and uses tape around the openings to close them off. Then they step inside and the magic begins. Well, I think it's magic. I love watching spray foam expand and the progression on how quickly a space like this can get covered. It's always cool to watch pros do any job. I've seen spray foam before, but never on corrugated metal. The technique here was fun to watch. The sprayer went through and first hit all of the low spots. Then after that expanded to its full height, they would fill in between so the entire wall would be flat. For a space my size, 2 sprayers were able to knock out the job in just a few hours. While you watch that progress, let me give you some general information on spray foam. First, there are 2 types, open cell and closed cell. Closed is going to be more expensive, but it typically has an R value of 6 per inch, whereas open has 3.5 per inch. So just about double the R value for the same amount of space. I went with closed here because closed actually strengthens the structure by up to 300%. It's great for structures in any high winds like hurricane or tornadoes. In fact, some states will even give you an insurance credit if you go with closed, so be sure to check that one out. Apparently, open has better sound dampening qualities. It's harder for sound to pass through it, but I'm told that it's not a big enough difference to really matter. However, a big difference between the 2 types is open cell will absorb water. It's like a sponge. So you never want to use it in situations that have high moisture, but closed is actually a moisture barrier approved by FEMA. In fact, in colder climates that are 5 or higher, such as Denver or Colorado, after spraying 1.5 inches of closed cell spray foam, it becomes a vapor barrier that meets code as a class 2. We don't have to worry about that in Texas, but I thought I would throw it out there. The guys here are spraying 2 inches of closed cell. It's interesting because when I went with open cell on my stick frame, I did 5.5 inches. But with closed cell, after 2 inches, you actually get diminishing return, so it's not worth going thicker. Now let's get into the main reason on why I went with spray foam insulation over any other type. Yes, it is more expensive, but when comparing all the information and benefits, there is simply no competition. Most people understand R value, so that's what they use for the main buying decision. My building has an R13 value, and some would look at fiberglass bat and say it also has an R13, so the cost difference then decides which one they go with. But something important to consider is air leakage. No other product other than spray foam can create a 100% sealed envelope, a bubble, a corner-to-corner coverage to stop air from moving in and out. It is incredibly fascinating once you get into the numbers. Well, I think it's fascinating. If you take a 2,000 square foot attic as an example, with any insulation type, if you have just a 1% void, maybe the door isn't insulated, that 1% loss of R value will decrease thermal resistance by 27%. If you go up to 5% of a void, you're looking at 60% decrease. That means if the product isn't installed correctly or isn't capable of covering 95% of the space to stop air movement, then you'll be wasting a ton of money, but thinking you have great insulation. So yes, spray foam is more expensive, but it's capable of preventing air leakage like no other product on the market can. And man, does it make such a huge difference. Right now it's summer in Texas, so it's interesting to start the day off feeling like you're in a hot box, but then ending it feeling like you're in the shade. Now, in most cases, the spray foam gets covered with walls. However, since this is going to be a warehouse for inventory, I didn't want to spend the money to cover it up. So instead, I decided to paint the spray foam. Know that the white will yellow over time when exposed to UV. And I know the most obvious choice for making the space look big and reflect light is white, but I didn't want to mess with masking off all of the beams and girders of the building. So instead, I color matched the steel and went with maroon. I imagine tons of you will give me kickback on going with the dark color for the space, but please just remember, it is my space. This is a lot of area to cover, and yes, I do have an HVLP, but for a job this size, it would still be such a burden to paint. So instead, I brought out my Airless. This is the Wagner Control Pro 170. If you don't know, the big difference between an HVLP and an Airless is an HVLP has a pot of paint connected to the gun you're spraying, whereas an Airless has a sucker-upper. That's a technical term. That goes right into a gallon or 5-gallon container of paint. This reduces how often you have to stop and refill your source. Then the unit itself regulates paint movement through a hose that feeds your gun as you paint. The Control Pro applies a consistent, high-quality finish on large home improvement projects, such as these walls, a fence, or even painting a house. And by investing in one, I'm dramatically saving on what a painting contractor would charge me to paint the same space. By the way, to give you a time perspective, it took me just over an hour to paint all the walls in here. Crazy. I've used a few airless sprayers and love the control this Wagner one gives you. It also is incredibly lightweight, so moving it around is not a problem at all. The dipper, I really should look up the technical term for this. Oh, pickup tube. It's called the pickup tube. The pickup tube has a filter on it to keep any contaminants out of the sprayer, and it's very easy to clean once you're finished. The Pro Control 170 is available online and in stores at Lowe's if you're interested. Okay folks, and I think that's it for this major step. I know spray foam is expensive, but just remember that what you invest once into spray foam insulation, you will save on heating and cooling for the rest of the life that you're using that building. If you've had questions on the spray foam process or the different types, then I hope that this video has helped you out. Next up on the shop series, I'm going to be, what am I doing next? Oh, building cabinets. I'm gonna be building some simple but durable strong cabinets. So stay tuned if you're interested.